She was the solitary sort of girl who greeted the birds on the way to school in the morning and was partial to the companionship of books. At the age of 8, she was writing stories of her own. At 10, at her mother's urging, Rachel entered a contest sponsored by the popular children's magazine St. Nicholas and became a published author. By 14, she was submitting her work to magazines for sale.
If we picture a girl in a small farm in nowhere, Pennsylvania, who is transported through literature and can imagine being elsewhere, I think she was led to see that as something that she could do, and it was constantly reinforced.
Maria Carson had always wanted to go to college and couldn't. So she was going to be quite sure that this daughter, this smart daughter, was going to go to college.
When Rachel won a scholarship to Pennsylvania College for Women, Maria sold off even the family china to help cover her daughter's expenses, then made the 30-mile round trip to Pittsburgh most weekends to visit her.
She was the star pupil. Everyone realized right away what a talented writer she was, and also saw that this was her ambition in life, that she wanted to be a writer. So it came as a great shock when she fell in love with biology. The science of life just struck a chord in her that I think she didn't realize was there.
Thrilled by the prospect of understanding the natural world she'd been taught to so closely observe, Carson changed her major from English to biology and announced her intention to go on to graduate school. She spent the next 2 years taking courses in zoology, physiology, anatomy. But her true interest only revealed itself after graduation, when she landed a coveted research spot at the Marine Biology Laboratory in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and for the first time in her life, laid eyes on the ocean. Then came an incendiary book that sowed seeds of doubt.
This is one of the nation's best sellers, first printed on September 27, 1962. Up to now, 500,000 copies have been sold, and Silent Spring has been called the most controversial book of the year.
At the eye of the storm was Rachel Carson, one of the most celebrated American writers of her time. With her first 3 books, a lyrical trilogy about the sea, Carson had opened people's eyes to the natural world. Now, in Silent Spring, she delivered the dark warning that they might soon destroy it.
If we are ever to solve the basic problem of environmental contamination, we must begin to count the many hidden costs of what we are doing.
Ms. Carson maintains that the balance of nature is a major force in the survival of man, whereas the modern chemist, the modern biologist, the modern scientist believes that man is steadily controlling nature.
It was sort of the gospel at the time that human ingenuity would triumph over nature. What Carson was arguing was for caution. She really confronted the orthodoxies of her time.
She was accused of being a communist, of being a hysterical female Luddite. The reaction was to attack the messenger.
Man's attitude toward nature is today critically important, simply because we have now acquired a fateful power to alter and to destroy nature. But man is part of nature, and his war against nature is inevitably a war against himself.
During the past years, do you think that the public was sufficiently appraised of the potential hazards of pesticides?
The answer I could say very quickly is no.
At his press conference on August 29, 1962, President Kennedy was asked,
there appears to be growing concern among scientists as to the possibility of dangerous long-range side effects from the widespread use of DDT and other pesticides. Have you considered asking the Department of Agriculture or the Public Health Service to take a closer look at this?
Yes, and I know that they already are.
I think particularly, of course, since Ms. Carson's book, but they are examining the matter.
The next day, the administration announced that the government pesticide program would be reviewed by the Federal Council on Science and Technology and by a panel of the President's Science Committee.
Welcome back to Washington Journal. For about the next 40 minutes, we're joined by Linda Lear, who is...
Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming in. She's a biographer, among other things, the biographer of Rachel Carson. And if you were to describe Rachel Carson to somebody who might never have heard of her at all, or who might know vaguely who she is, how would you describe Rachel Carson?
Carson was a scientist and an environmentalist who loved nature and wanted to share that love with the public by writing about it, but also became alarmed that we had overstepped our bounds as human beings and were harming ourselves and the environment irrevocably, and wanted to warn us about that.
Okay. And I know that you think, that she's obviously the author of 4 books.
4 books.
And it's the view of many, including yourself, I think that some of the early books are quite good as well, and maybe even better. But the one that she's best known for, and I know we're going to try to put this under the RoboCam here and show our audience the Silent Spring, which is the book that probably made her reputation for the ages.
It did.
And can you explain, first of all, what led up to the writing of this book and what the impact of the book was?
Well, the agricultural chemical companies were big business after World War II, and DDT had been invented and created and used widely during the war, very successfully against insect pests. But after the war, it became commonly used in agriculture to kill all manner of pests, sprayed by airplane without anybody's permission over vast areas of America. And Carson became concerned that evidence was showing her that wildlife was dying. The Patuxent Refuge, which is right up the road in Laurel, Maryland, had done a lot of work on DDT, and it showed absolutely conclusively that it was very harmful to fish and other wildlife. And they were dying by overuse, what Carson called misuse. She wasn't against pesticides. She was against their misuse and their overuse and their ineffective use. And so she set out to bring this kind of science to the public, to make it understandable. And the book was published in 1962 and caused an incredible ruckus, because here was a woman without very many credentials in the way the world worked, telling us that the government was lying, that science was wrong, and that we should take another look at what we were doing.